What up, what up, what up, Robyn? What's going on?
Hey, KC. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. So, as you know, we put out some teasers
Yes.
to the world, and they're like, okay, what are they talking about? What's going on? Like, we got to get in. Like, we got to, like, it's amazing.
Yes, we've got to do this. It's finally happening. Conversations are now turning into action. And I'll tell you, this is so far outside of my comfort zone, but that's one of the things we'll talk about today is doing things, stepping outside of your comfort and have conversations and do things that grow you and the people around you. So I'm
Yeah.
ready. I'm excited.
Well, you better stay excited because we got a long year ahead of us. So
Ooh,
we got guests that'll come from different parts of the world. We got
you.
guests that are in our backyard, and we got guests who are going to be off the wall doing some crazy stuff. So I'm excited about what this thing is turned into. And as this first episode is just about you and I. It's about why we're doing this, so the audience get to know who we are, and we'll talk on a few topics just to kind of get this thing going. But really, them knowing what the Growth Lab is about. So we could probably start off with the phone call. You remember that phone call that you received?
Yes, yes, I do. It was over a year ago, well over a year ago, about another business and an idea for us to get together and just play off of each other's ideas and personalities. And you mentioned a podcast,
Yeah.
and there weren't specifics or any details. And as soon as you told me internally, and this is in full transparency, I said, uh-oh, this is not me. This isn't who I am or who I think myself to be. And having recently retired and the job that I had, being such a public presence was not in my calculus. And so that is one thing that I am most nervous about is open to strangers and to people. And in further conversations with you, though, you did quell those, and I would say fears, they were fears because this is so far into the unknown and not anything I've ever done or considered doing. And in further conversations with you, you put my mind at ease that what we were talking about and the subjects and who we would have as guests are part of our growth collectively, yours, mine, the guests, and the listeners, and that it's not about having the answers, which was what I was most intimidated about. It was having ideas, talking through them, and growing together. And that's what started to build my excitement around this and how we shaped it into what it is, a growth lab, to have conversations in real time, battle test them in our laboratory, and they don't even have to be fully fleshed out. But the purpose is progress and movement and conversation and community. And that's why I'm here. And that's how you got me in this seat and for us to finally get this episode recorded and aired. So I'm excited. Are you excited?
Yeah. I'm more than excited, but the conversation, from a year ago was really about it was about trust. And as you know, as I was building something, I wanted to make sure I surround myself with people who are people who are respect, and people who are going to do great things, who are doing great things, who's going to continue doing great things, not only for our military community, but for the world. And I remember thinking of a lot of people, and I thought about, man, Robyn would be great. She would be great for a podcast. One, because if I'm going to have a podcast, I need someone, especially if we're going to do something with another person, I need someone who can help balance me out. And I felt like, you know what? She can balance me out, especially some of the things we've done in the past, especially how you attack certain things. And so I thought it was going to be a win-win. And so for the folks who don't know, this is the Growth Lab. This is part of what we call Summit 365. And this is in part with the Air Force's Sergeant Association. And I say in part with the Air Force's Sergeant Association because this is an umbrella of the Air Force's Sergeant Association, which is called the Uniformed Services Foundation. And so we aim to bring podcasts, broadcasts, development to all parts of the world, whichever which way, shape, or form, but into platforms to where people are at. And Summit 365 encompasses all those different things, from podcasts to development to family and readiness to our family and our spouses, which includes our spouses and kids, And so all those individuals, all the people that are in this, if you will, in this incubator or in this ecosystem will be fed through the Summit 365, which is going to be year round. Going back and looking at the work that we've done in previous locations like Lacken Air Force Base, I knew that you already understood what the assignment would be. And
Well, okay. And one thing I've noticed is that with podcast and beyond, we are surrounded by advice, opinions, no shortage of those, and frameworks. And I haven't seen as many spaces to think out loud about what growth really looks like in real life. And so the Growth Lab is absolutely the appropriate name for the podcast as we continue to develop ourselves and finding not necessarily answers, but just testing ideas, questioning assumptions, which I've found you doing very frequently, and then learning in public, one conversation at a time.
that's going to be it. And so let's start off with introductions, so the world can always come back to this first initial podcast and they will know who Robyn Pryor is. So, Robyn, who are you?
I feel like that's a loaded question. So, first and foremost, I am someone who is very passionate about learning more about myself, about people, about the environment, about ideas, and just continuing to grow. A whole bunch of titles: a wife, a mom, a professional, a friend, a daughter, and all of those shape who I am and my actions and what I do and what I get involved in. And part of why I said yes to this, and one of my intentions for this year, is to be very deliberate about what I put my time and attention to in finding things that matter. I mentioned earlier, I recently retired from the Air Force after 20 years, and I spent a lot of last year really doing a lot of introspection in what do I value and what brings me joy, and saying yes to fewer things that I know would further limit my what I feel is already limited bandwidth, and dedicating my time and energy, especially and attention to things that are going to grow me and the people around me, and especially things that are aligned with what I value. And that, in a nutshell, is who I am. You are out there unapologetically yourself and involved in so many different things. But at the end of the day, it's things that continue to develop people. And that's who I always have known you to be. So, KC, who are you?
Well, I'm a scholar. No,
You are.
I
After
would start by saying I'm a guy who's from Lafayette, Louisiana. I like to say Lafayette, Louisiana, home of the world's largest crawfish boil. Grew up in a small town, but had big boy dreams. Joined the Air Force at 18, played basketball throughout my younger youth. Was hoping at some point I would go and do something on basketball, but I also noticed that my surroundings weren't adequate enough, and I would say I wasn't mature enough to go out into the world and probably build something on my own, from the ground up, right? And so the best choice I felt like I had at the time was joining the United States Air Force, which I did. So, served 28 and a half years, retired in 2024, started my own company, went through the full round of things that you hear about when you're retiring, when you go through certain moments. And I know we're going to talk on those things on different shows. But for me, I'm a father. I have three sons. I'm a husband. I got one wife. The number. Got to keep the numbers going. Right. I got one wife, and I'm passionate about living. I can recall things that have happened in my younger self and things in my life that have happened that I was just living day to day. And then when certain things happened in my life, I realized that I have to live purposefully every day. And so when you ask who KC is, I am an individual who lives purposefully every single day, knowing that I get one life to live, and I get to make an impact every single time I walk out the house, anytime I encounter someone, anytime that I engage with someone, that I get to do something that'll help the world or that individual. And so that's KC in a nutshell. I'm a grandfather and got one grandchild, and
yes,
um,
that's
yeah, so
exciting.
for me, I'm living a life of purpose, and yeah, that's who I am. I'm a Air Force Sergeant Association member, and this is part of what we do. But that linkage there also says that I am still connected. After 28 and a half years, I'm still connected to my military community in different facets, way, shape, or form.
You bring up purpose. That's something that I have found in recent years, found myself lacking. And I call it really rudderless in lacking that purpose. And to just bring in nautical terms where you're moving around and moving in the water without a specific vector or a rudder guiding you to where you need to go. And once you find that purpose, it's a really powerful thing. Something I'm sure many people will resonate with, but something that very recently, I've focused more attention and intention into in aligning things once I have found what my purpose is, aligning my actions around that. And so it is a very, very powerful and grounding, yet simultaneously liberating thing that once you identify what that is, what you want to do, and it can continue to evolve and change as you evolve and change. But then you feel like you have a direction, a vector, rudder, a guide, all the things. And so I'm glad you brought that up. And that I think aligns with permission as well. In speaking of the podcast, I didn't need permission to do it, to be who I am, and to talk about the topics that we want to discuss with each other and with our guests. But that word, purpose and then permission, really sticks with me. And I'm hoping that the viewers who listen to this, whether they're leading teams or building something themselves or navigating a change, which you and I have very recently, chances are that they're also experimenting,
Yeah.
even if they don't call it that, right? And so making decisions without perfect information, which was something previously debilitating for me. I'm sure you've heard, what is it? Perfect is the enemy of good is, what is that? I don't even know. Perfect is the enemy of good. And being a recovering perfectionist myself, waiting for things to be perfect, waiting for permission to go, that is something that really stalls progress. And so I've learned to adjust in real time, learn as I go, having grace with myself, and hoping that that message then also resonates with our listeners.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be key when it comes to our audience, and is that we are normal people. We're not out here trying to do what anybody else is trying to do. We're not out here trying to compete with anybody else and what they're trying to do or what they're doing. We're simply in a space where we're just trying to be part of the growth journey of people, and that's part of this is being the growth lab. And it's something you said when it comes to purpose, right? And being intentional is that there's so many podcasts out there, so many and choices you have. And so when I talk to listeners or I talk to people who's looking for a good podcast, I'm telling them this is our first show, but what we're planning and what we're embarking on, like jump on it because this is not only purposeful, but it's honest. And I'm not saying that what's out there is not as honest, but you're not going to meet two individuals who I believe who are out in this space, who out here in the world, who's being their authentic selves. I know for me, I run across people all the time, and you see their personas, you see that their avatar really, that's who you with, and in real life, these aren't the people that are in real life, and that is something I want people to see with this. And when you see me out in public and when you see us together, or you see us with our families, right? When you come to us, we're the same person. I eat chicken wings and lamb chops, like I'm eating with my fingers, every bit of it, and a cowboy steak, same with my hands. Well, I'm gonna be a little more. I'm gonna be a little more elegant, but you get my point. Is that we are who we are, and there's parts of us that's true core parts of us that don't have to change to fake to the world. And I think that's the hard part, especially when we retire. We've been doing something so long in our lives that we have become this thing, right? This certain visual thing that people think of. They see there are people that see you, Rob, and say, "Oh, I just met you. I just remember seeing you on LinkedIn, and oh, I'm finally seeing you in person." And people will be like, you're the person I expected. And then there are some people you meet, and they're like, you, I don't know, you ever heard this before? You're different than I expected.
Think that's a really political way of putting that,
Yeah.
passive aggressive, but yes, I've had those thoughts occasionally too, and it goes back to your idols, and not necessarily that the people we see are our idols, but it's a trend in what I'm seeing and pop up in my feed that
Uh-huh.
you don't ever want to meet your idols because rarely do they measure up to what your expectations are. And whether people are idols or not, Something I've always aimed for is authenticity and being true to who I am. And I've taken a page out of your book. We met in 2018, was
It was
it?
18. I'm claiming 18. That's what we're gonna stick with.
Yeah, so
18.
that's when I PCSed to Lackland. So we met right around that same time, very shortly after I PCSed. Someone had connected us because I had an idea for development and set up a meeting with you. You were BMT superintendent for basic
Yeah.
military training, and I said, "Okay, what do I
Three,
this
two, six. Booyah, Bulldogs.
if you
Yeah,
say
okay.
so, if you no." I was at the 331st, so I have a different alliance, but
Okay.
the ideas that I had, you took and you helped me grow beyond what I thought was possible, grow those ideas. And you continue to do that, sometimes to a point where it is very intimidating, and I don't know if I can scale or fully execute these ideas that have become, in my mind, initially so grandiose. I have a pretty pragmatic approach to things and I enjoy taking bite-sized pieces out of projects and out of life because it's more manageable that way. But I am so inspired by every conversation, every single conversation, and that's not an exaggeration that I have with you when I say, I want to do this one little thing, professional development for women. And you say, this is a great idea. And you have all of this experience, all of this training, all of this education, and now this drive and initiative and great idea to grow to where you can affect and impact more than just women at Lackland. And then I usually have to take time and digest it, and then once I think about it and think it through, I'm like, I can do this and we can do this together. And it's not just me, it's a team of people who you also connect me with. That's something you're really good at is connecting people. And those relationships and partnerships and ideas continue to grow because you put people together, whether it's virtually or in person. And so ever since I met you, feel like I have continued to grow and evolve and be a better version of myself because of our conversations and because of the things that you teach me and because of time spent with you and your lovely family. And that's how we are here, why we are here today. And then I want to talk about really the conversations, right? And so I've noticed people want to map. I usually do. And in these conversations with you specifically about this podcast is, people don't really want a map. They think they do. What they need is a compass. And that's one of the reasons I gifted you a compass for your retirement. And that's something that really resonates with me. And conversations like this matter. Again, we don't have to have the answers and we don't, but through these conversations, we learn to trust our own judgment, and we want people to then begin to trust their judgment instead of outsourcing it. And so that's how I believe this is different.
I also think that people come into your life in for certain seasons and for certain reasons, right? And this is not a negative thing. I mean, you go back and you start talking about 2018, you start talking about some of the work that we've done as a team and the growth that happened, in 18 when we're building something to now to be impacted by COVID to, and even I think when we were doing this, I mean, we had people that we fully trusted who dropped off the team and, just for life experiences and our life situations. And we're like, man, we're losing good people. And but we had to keep going. Right. And I think that's something that our military environment taught us is that we're all expendable and that people will come, people will go, whether they're the anchors or whether they're the lifters or whomever, the people that's left behind just got to pick the pieces up and keep going. And, and there's going to be friendships that's going to last forever. There's going to be friendships that's going to be for a very short amount of time. There's going to be relationships. Relationships is going to be big and it's going to be small. And I think for the growth lab is that people need to understand that that's okay. That's okay. I was on the podcast recently and an individual asked me a question about retirement. And I was saying, hey, the phone stopped ringing. It's supposed to stop ringing. It's like you were leading all these things. You had 100 people, 3,000 people, whatever it was, and you were needed, you were needed, you were needed. But there's a new normal in your life. And if you stay stuck to what you were and where you were, how are you going to grow? And the growth lab is about that. It's planting the seed. It's watching that seed germinate. It's that seed actually starting to grow into something that's going to bear fruit one day. And that's, man, we're going to test some things, talk some smack. We're gonna have some fun with folks that are on here, and that is what it's about. And man, I'm excited for what we're going to do and what people are going to hear and how, and what will be that fruit, that we see, 6 months from now. I think for me is when I am walking, somewhere, and Natalie hates this, by the way. I don't care where we're at. She's like, dude, we're in the middle of Timbuktu and somebody knows you here, right? And be like, come up to you and it's like, hey, I heard this that you said on that show and it did something to me. It helped me. Or here's a perspective that, hey, I disagree with that, but here's a perspective I want to share with you, KC. And then they help me grow. Yeah. I know that's what we're gonna get.
Me too. For to go back to your point about the team that we had and COVID, boy, COVID was a hard time. And it was hard for everybody. And one thing I talk about, and still a topic that's resonant with me, I believe I heard it from Brene Brown, is comparative suffering, in that people have their own hardships and their suffering in their own way. And you are doing yourself a disservice if you compare yours to others, usually from the lens of people have it much worse. So then I can't, be as sad or as upset or as stressed as I am. But your suffering and your hardships are yours and yours alone, and other people's are theirs. And you can't compare, and it's unhealthy. Comparison is the thief of joy. And even in instances where you are not feeling joyful, but not allowing yourself time to really grieve or process whatever it is that you're going through, whatever hardship it is, you're doing yourself a disservice. And that in and of itself hinders growth. And so I didn't expect to go into that level of detail. No,
Oh, this is what it's about.
I've had conversations
No, this is
with members who were part of our team, and everyone had some very different, I mean, still do, but very different things going on, especially during COVID and being in tech training for myself and being in BMT for you. Operations and training didn't stop. And having to show up every day with a very real fear that you could get sick, you could potentially die. And that sounds so morbid, but that was, at least for me, a very real concern, because at that time we didn't know what the effects are. We still don't fully know what the long-term effects are of COVID. And so, I mean, fortunately, we survived and we are here to talk about it. But that is something that doing the C3, Care, Commit, Connect, and C3 development, and continuing to provide a space and a forum for people to come together even through COVID. It started with in-person events, and then during COVID transitioned to virtual via Zoom or even Teams, to still
Yeah.
provide an opportunity for people to connect. I will say that those C3 circles that we established with C3 women and then C3 professional development are largely what kept me encouraged through that time.
You know, as you talk on all those things, right? I had a conversation with a good friend of ours, and she was talking about things that she did in Germany, and it was the development platforms. It's something that we work together on some development platforms, and then now on this side of the world, we're retired. But when we go back and look since 2008, these are all things that we have been a part of, whether we're leading it, whether we're managing, or whether we're just members on it. And then now we're retired and here in 2026, and I see all these little things popping up, right? All over DC, all over the country. And it's like, hey, look, this event, this is focused on this population. And and I love seeing it, and it's new people doing it, right? But I'm like, when I think about us, we're not new to this. We're true to this. Like we've been doing this. So and so like we're doing the podcast, right? Like I remember the combustible engine individual. I forgot her name. You brought on to the show. That show, this is years back, right? That she spoke about engine and how it relates to leadership. This is not nothing new we're doing here. And even when I talk about the Summit 365, they're like, "Oh man, this is amazing." And it's hard for me not to say it's kind of stuff that we've been doing. This is and the people are like, "Man, how you do all this?" And man, it's a lot of work. And I'm like, well, if you've been doing it since 2008, it's not hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. Let me not, and I don't want to take away from people who are working hard. I'm just saying for us who've had that repetition, the scar tissue from doing it,
Mhm.
the trials, yeah, yeah, I can kind of put some of these things together in a short amount of time and, and understand my bandwidth, right? And so I see a lot of things that's coming up and I say, you know what, man, I want to do this. And then I think to myself, well, it's so saturated in there. So people might think that you're a copycat, that you're trying to do what they're doing. I'm just like, no, I got a resume. And let me show you this resume that tells you what we've done throughout the years, right? And but then again, I tell myself, like, why do I always, one, why am I keeping receipts of what I've done? And then two, why do I need to share what my resume is? Because at the end of the day, what I've learned today is that resumes matter, but people want to know what you bring to the table today. That
Mhm.
resume was 5 years back. That resume goes back even what you did in your last job. But what are you willing to do today to help advance what this next thing you're going to be doing is going to make them better and also have a return on investment. And
Mhm.
so even when you look at 365, what we're doing, oh yeah, you might see some flavors from all the things that we have done, but I promise you, there's some new flavors in there that people aren't expecting. Won't they? It was like they're gonna be like, "Oh, whoa! I didn't see that coming." Why? Because it's 2026. If we're doing the stuff, the same thing I was doing in 2004, 2008, yeah, then I'm kind of wasting my time because it's probably not going to meet the generation of today where they're at.
Yes, and to your point about being in the game, for you being in the game since 2004, 2008, doing professional development, foundationally, yes, there are lessons and competencies and ideas that are the same foundationally, and it's important distinction there. But as you continue to do this and build that repetition, and as time continues to pass, there are things that are happening all over the world, things that are happening in the military, different experiences for the service members, economic, geopolitical events. All of these things shape how we grow, how we learn, and the topics as well. And so, really, what changes is the delivery so that it is resonant with the current population, whether it is Gen Z, Gen A, millennials, whatever it is. There are things that do change, yes, but I believe foundationally, a lot of the concepts are still the same. They don't change all that much. And to go back to your point about 2008 and doing professional development then, that these relationships that you have built, how you talk about planting seeds and watching them bear fruit. I believe it was you, and I'd heard this a little late in my career, but your network is your net worth. And from the moment I heard that, I was more deliberate about the relationships I was building with people, not in a transactional way, but do these people help me grow? Do they help me be better? And as I have gotten older, then starting to impart what I have learned and what I know and sharing, like you, I mentioned earlier, our connector, and sharing some of those relationships so that other people can expand their worldview, their way of thinking, and expanding their network too. And so something, that you and your team started in 2008 is continuing to bear fruit even to this day,
Yeah.
and something that I'm excited to be part of that maybe we can
You
talk.
know, but yeah, I'm gonna argue. I'm gonna debate with you on one little point here, and I'm not playing this advocate, right? I'm just telling you how. I get what people say when they're saying your net, your net work is your net worth. I used to love that conversation. Even the one I just wrote about recently. It's about protecting your peace, right? There's a fallacy in that, and I think for me, and this is for me, and I think it's very I have to be very specific on this, is that your network your network your network is your net worth. I agree to some point, but I believe that we rely too much on the net worth part.
What do you
And, and I've watched people in this space, right? Not only in the corporate space, I've watched where, they start to align themselves with people who have more money, right? Or who fit a certain demographic or a certain thing that allows them to be more favorable or popular within this segment, right? I've watched this. And I believe that, and I've watched where people lost themselves. trying to fit into this particular network. And yes, that their net worth is going to grow. And you know what? But at the end of the day, I just feel like you have to sit with yourself and be comfortable with who you are. And I'll give another quick example. I got people that my best friend. I won't say his name on the show because he'll throw punch me when he see me. My best friend, best friend to this day. We talk almost every day. He served 10 years in prison. He got out in, I believe it was 2017. He got out, and even through the years, he's been, I wouldn't say struggling, but trying to find his way, trying to get himself in a position. And every day, it's something new because it's hard to acclimate yourself to the world and the world to acclimate to you after you've served time. And that's a whole nother that's a whole nother show in itself, right? And he's my network. He's my network. That's my brother. That's my guy. And I wouldn't trade a billionaire. I wouldn't trade a CEO for this guy here because I know that this guy got my back no matter what. And so is my net worth smaller because I surround myself with him? But I tell you, if we put him in a room with these CEOs, these managers, these billionaires, you wouldn't know the difference if he was one or not. That's how articulate he is. That's how he carries himself. And so for me, I push back on that statement just a little bit because I can tell you story after story of friends I have that don't sit in this particular space. But I do have a friend network that have adopted me in the last 6 months to a year. Yes, they are high earners. They are in certain positions, but I've also scrutinized them. Like, I don't want to be around people who looks down at people. I don't want to be around people who thinks they're better than because they have something. I was hearing this story the other day. I'm gonna chop it up. I'm gonna mess it up, Robin. So don't critique me later on. And be like, dude, you came to tell a story you don't know it. But the story basically goes like this: two gentlemen goes to the CEO, and they're basically going for a job, right? They're going for a job, and they're the top two individuals in their craft. They're the subject matter experts. If you take them both, man, your company is going to go to the moon. You take one, your company is going to go to the stars, right? I don't know which one's closer. Pick one. But the point is that the CEO watched them both. He watched their interaction. He watched the way they just talk to each other. He just watched them throughout this meal that they were having together. And the one thing that he did, and I'm gonna cut the story short, is that he chose an individual. And the other guy, who probably had a little more seniority, felt that he should have gotten picked. And the individual that he did pick, what wasn't really where he was at, but still had some expertise. And he says, the reason why I chose him over you was the way in which he talked to the waitress, the way in which he thanked the waitress when she passed by, the way in which he conducted himself throughout. Where you conduct yourself, you didn't say thank you not one time. You acted like, you acted real privileged sitting at the table here. And it was the way in which you conducted yourself. And it had nothing to do about the job. So let me say this, it had nothing to do about the job itself,
Who
but
they
the
were
way
as
in
a
which
human
he
being.
himself, it turned the CEO off and said, "Hey, this is probably not the best person for the team." And I say this to just kind of circle around and close it out and say that my network is about people who not only can be in certain positions, who can hold certain titles, who can lift me to be where I'm at, but they better have the integrity, the transparency, the love for people, the love for their family when they're out and about. I'm going on, but I'm talking a whole lot. But you get my point though, right? Like, you got to have all those other ingredients that matter for me to say that my net worth is my net worth. My net worth is truly of that value. Because you can be worth a billion and be, let me say a couple million and still not have the integrity and not have the honesty. And that's a problem. And I don't associate myself with individuals who carry themselves that way.
I think we're similarly aligned in that way. And I appreciate you challenging that quote or that phrase. But to your point about your friend, who is to say that he, even having been in prison for 10 years, is not worth being associated with? I mean, who is to say who is valuable and who isn't? I think I know that you, as the
Yeah.
individual, and me as the individual are the ones to say how valuable our network is and choose who we bring into our network and make part of our network based on our individual values. And are the people that we are considering or are bringing into our network aligned with those values? And for you, what I'm hearing is that you are seeking people who will grow you, who will grow your way
Mhm.
of thinking, who will grow who you are in all the roles that you fill. And so it is you, KC, that decides who is valuable and worthy to be part of your network. And so it is still, I firmly stand in your network is your net worth because you are the one to curate that. Just because someone is a billionaire doesn't necessarily in and of itself make them worthy to be associated with because there are things that can negatively affect and people that can negatively affect who you are, how people see you. And so, really, what is the driver in that? And
Yeah.
what is the motive for internal motive that you are using to bring people in? Is it because you want to expand your network? Is it because you want to expand into different industries? Is it because you want to get your name out there? I mean, the reasons are endless, but so long as the individual who is doing the work and seeking out people to be associated with or part of their network, whatever their driver is, they will find people that aligns with that. Yours and mine, again, seem similarly aligned in that we want people of true value who are good and decent human beings to be part of our networks, and that is who we choose to associate ourselves with.
Yeah, and I would close it up with a button by saying your net worth is not always equated to money. It's not always equated to money. There's so many other things that matters. And this, I tell you, this is what I live for. This is the conversations I love to have. And when you start thinking about transitions, the way you thought, a year ago, 2 years ago is different, and maybe a little different than the way you're thinking now. I'm in a space with a lot of corporate people, and we both are. The work ethic is different. The challenges are different,
Very different.
but and the grind is different,
Mhm.
and yet we retire and we still think that we should be that duck with the feet, running real fast and moving real fast on the water. And the truth is, we don't have to be that duck. We just have to be calm. We have to have a little more emotional intelligence. We have to be smart. We have to surround ourselves with people who are smarter than us in this space to grow with them.
Absolutely.
But I also see where even on this side, the growth lab is that stop. I have to tell individuals, stop seeking people who looks good on Facebook, who looks good on LinkedIn. I'm a coach, right? I get on calls with my clients. I remember last year I had a client that I work with, and client was sharing just some things, he or she, right, attached to a person who looked good on Facebook, who looked good on LinkedIn, and then they realize, like, when you pull that used car, you pull it up and you open up the hood and you see all the problems. It drives good, looks good, but then you find out that there are some things wrong with it, right? And
How
you're
much
having to backtrack
maintenance it
a
really
bit.
needs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it's gonna cost you, and it's gonna cost you more in the long run. Now, you might pay a little bit of money to get it now, but in the long haul, it's gonna cost you. And so, I tell folks, just, trust your instinct, trust your gut, but also build what that world looks like for you. If Robin goes out looking for a formula and hodgepodge it with the five people because people say, hey, the five nearest people to you, the five, people that you call your friends, that's who you are. You got me
We are
chopping
what
up
you
quotes from
got.
you, girl. But you get my point, right? You're some of the five people you surround yourself by, and if that's the case, then who you surround yourself by.
Mhm. Well, in alignment with growth, even though experiences are valuable, and it
Yeah.
teaches you who you don't want to be or who you don't want to align yourself with or who you don't want to know. And maybe not necessarily that person, but that type of person, whomever they may be. And so I am a firm believer in that there is a learning and growth opportunity in every interaction, in every relationship, in every experience we have.
Yeah, but we get so stuck and hardcore set against the failure, if you want to call it a failure in that moment. And there are times now, and it's the coolest thing and it's the roughest thing in my life. But the coolest thing is I know that when you're failing at something. You know when something is not going right.
Mhm.
And you're like, but you absorb it and you say, you know what? I'm gonna have to take a loss on this. But then you go into it knowing that there's gonna be a learning curve, a learning well, I wouldn't say curve, but a learning objective now, not necessarily a return on investment or a growth perspective or growth, but you're learning. And that learning is growth. We don't see it, but how many times have we failed at something, quote unquote fail, but we're so much better for it. We're so much better for going through that situation trial.
Yes. And as a recovering perfectionist, I have been conditioning myself to appreciate the process and the progress, however messy it is. And in the corporate spaces that we're part of and I'm navigating still is a lot of strategy. Even if something didn't work out and it's like, how do we get to point B now? And sometimes it's okay. And I have appreciated the process of the messiness. And that in and of itself is the learning lesson in that maybe I don't know where point B is, but I'm glad I realized that point A is not it. And in the process of navigating to point B, as we're determining this or identifying it collectively or individually, that there are things I need to avoid, there are things I appreciate, and then that informs how I move forward. And so it's not about having the answers, it's not about being perfect, it's about the process of growth and appreciating everything it encompasses. And some of it is ugly and some of it is very messy and some of it is hurtful. But in all of that mess and hurt and ugliness is beauty and progress. And really, so long as you reframe your thinking and focus on the progress and how you individually are better today than you were yesterday or the week before, then that's the goal. The goal is just to move forward and grow.
Yeah. And that's the growth lab. That's the growth lab. From our guests that we're gonna have on, and I can't wait to share
Yes.
all the people that's gonna be on here and who are gonna be lined up and we're gonna learn from. We're gonna take this on the road to some locations. And Robin's like, "Wait, we're going to so and so?" "Yep, and we're going to so and so, but we're gonna take it on the
Not
road."
finding out
And
with everyone else. Okay.
yeah, well, not too far from you. I mean, the headquarters is in Maryland, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, we're gonna go places. We're gonna have some pretty important people on the show. And when I say important people, I want people to think, oh, we're gonna have this particular person that has 80 million followers. Now, an important person can be the person that's sitting with 2 followers, but
Mhm.
have a strong message to share to the public because they have been through certain trials and tribulations in their life that they can share with a population that's looking for change and looking for recovery, looking to be healed. And so I don't want people to think that this show is going to be filled with just marquee people and the influencers. Yeah, but there was a little kid that's 12 years old that might be on the show who's an influencer, in his neighborhood because he saved lives due to a mass shooting that could have occurred. So a lot of things, we can talk on that. Yeah, but those type of people gonna have on this show. And it may be small to some people, but to many, they're a big deal. And that's what this show is about. It's about the growth lab. I would also add that if you're not growing by watching this show, then this is not the show for you. If you at a point in your life where you feel like you have reached the pinnacle of growth, because you've been around circles too. It's like, oh, you know what? I want to bring in these people to talk to my team. Well, are you going to be in that meeting too? Because your team is talking about you. So maybe it's time that you sit in that meeting too and you know that this is for you too. And so this is what it's about. It's about growth. It's about reflection. It's about application, and it's about seeing yourself change on the other side. That's the growth lab.
I love that. And to your point, if this is the forum and this is the conversations you want to listen to, and this is your first time listening, welcome. We are glad you're here.
Yeah. And some of y'all who we're going to open up our chat room, I'm going to let you know right now, do not be saying nothing crazy in the chat room because we're going to block you. No, I'm just messing. Well, we will. But yeah, so let's close this out, Robin. I want to, what thoughts you have for our audience, our soon to be new audience who's going to be joining us in our one of our first live shows coming up real soon. What is your outgoing thoughts to them?
I love that you say that it's not having specific marquee people, right? But everyone that we are bringing on and people who we don't have an opportunity to have as guests on our show are important. And this is about growing our ideas, battle testing them. It is not about having the answers, absolutely not about having all the answers, but it's about learning and growing in public together. And so I hope you look forward to it. And I am most looking forward to learning with you all, with each guest we have on the show.
Awesome, awesome. And I'll close it out with just 2 things, 2 quick things. One, I heard Jay-Z, famous poet of my time, said, "Even a broke clock is right 2 times a day." He said that. I don't know what that means in the context of this, but I just thought I would say something fancy since you always throwing out big words, but I just want to throw out a little something that might resonate with people. But the second thing is that every week and every time you get a new show alert of what we're bringing, just know that we are growing from you because you are going to be putting in the chat, you're going to be putting in the comments, you're going to be reaching out to us on things that you feel that we should have and things that we should talk about. There are so many things that we're going to be unscripted on, even with our guests, because sometimes the conversations just flow. And there are going to be some things that we're going to hold no holds bars, right? If you're going to call it, like, if somebody say something crazy, if I disagree, we're gonna have that conversation, and then we're gonna go professionally, right? We're gonna have the conversation and see where we can come to some line of understanding.
Mhm.
And I think at the end of the day is when it comes to Growth Lab, that some individuals are gonna see this as maybe counter to the way they're thinking. And I'm just asking folks, and this is my second thing, is I'm just asking you to be curious. Just like when you bring something to me and no, I may not agree with it, but if I put myself from judgment to being curious, then I may learn something in that moment, or the reflection, I may pick something up that's going to make me better. And I picked it up from Mr. Connor. He know who he is, but he taught me that a couple of months ago, and he said, "Go from judgment to curiosity." And
Mhm.
that's where I'm with every single show is how can I stay curious? Because if I'm curious, then I believe that that's going to translate to the quality of show that we're going to have on the Growth Lab if we stay curious.
Absolutely. That aligns. I know you wanted to close out and you can cancel this out, but it aligns directly with something that I've always told people I supervise and my friends is don't just be interesting, be interested. So interested in others and being curious, that's all part of a growth mindset. I love that.
Well, teammates, this is episode 1, and we're signing out. And next episode, be ready because we going to bring it, the
Yes.
Growth Lab.